Good evening and welcome to On Call with the Prairie Doc. He's ugly, slimy, and disgusting. He seems to be everywhere and always in your face. He's the perfect anthropomorphic image of that scourge influenza or the flu bug. And he is here tonight to go head to head with the best way we have of fighting him. Okay, well, and good to see you here. Thanks. Okay. Well, let's take a look at this week's Prairie Doc quiz question. After they were vaccinated, some people developed the flu because of the vaccination. True or false? Call or email your answer for only the next 10 minutes of our show. Viewers who call in the correct answer will be entered into a drawing to win a signed copy of A Picture of Health. This book was written by me with accompanying photographs by Dr. Judith Peterson. We'll announce the answer and the winner at the end of the show. Remember, you have only 10 minutes to get your answer in and get your questions in. We answer your questions as they are called in and sent to us via Facebook or email. Call in questions to 1-888-376-6225 or send us an email. Well, joining us tonight to help debug the flu myths is Dr. Tom Huber of the Sanford Health Peer Clinic. Dr. Huber, welcome.
Glad to be here, Rick.
I think you were here when you were the president of the State Medical Association
yes,
a couple
I was.
years back in a different building.
Correct, and I had a hard time finding this one tonight.
Yeah. Wove your way through the South Dakota State University campus, and here you are. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
I am a family physician that has practiced medicine in Pierre, South Dakota since 1980. Actually, a Pierre native. Went to school, got trained, went back, been there ever since. I do family medicine, and I'm still working about as hard as I wanted to, and I've enjoyed being there, taking care of a lot of people for a long period of time. You get to know parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, all in the same family. Wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, so you're a peer guy.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about graduating from the School of Medicine. What School of Medicine did you say you graduated?
I went to the University of South Dakota School of Medicine, and I was in the very first class that was able to get an MD degree there in 1977. It was a wonderful time to be a pioneer in education at that time, and that medical school has grown into a well-known, well-respected medical school serving the needs of the region, and has enabled the medical systems in South Dakota to turn into the dramatic and important systems that they are.
Oh, that's really true too. And they say that every penny for every dollar you put into the School of Medicine, it comes back how many times?
I don't know the exact answer, but a lot. It's economic development, which is kind of a buzzword in state government today, and it's a good reason when you're asked or when you meet your legislators, tell them, hey, make sure you support the medical school.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm glad you brought it up. You know, that's what's the difference between Sioux City, Iowa, and Sioux Falls. They were the same size at one time, and look what's happened with Sioux Falls because of all of the things that's happened there. Well, what made you decide to go into family medicine?
I always wanted to be a physician, actually, when I was a little kid. And as I...
You had a mentor, a teacher, or a hero? Or?
I don't know. It was just something that seemed to, that I liked, and I wanted to pursue it. And I don't really know what made the spark happen. But then the whole idea of family medicine started being portrayed in television. It started making headway in the media. And I said, maybe that's something for me. I wasn't sure if it was family medicine or not, but I found that out when I got into medical school, and I saw that the medical school that they wanted to develop that would graduate physicians in South Dakota was going to be oriented towards educating, I should say, family physicians. And that appealed to me from just how I was. And I also felt that if the state was going to do that for a school, some of us ought to follow the lead and make it work, become family physicians, and stay in the state.
So Of course, family physicians are the most well-paid of the specialties in medicine. True or false?
Surely you jest. Surely you jest.
So, it's and yes, don't call me Shirley. So the question I have is, so if it's the least, it's right in there on the bottom, and I'm not playing any violin about internal medicine and family physicians and pediatrics who are primary care doctors are on the bottom rung of payment. We still get very well paid.
Absolutely.
But you can get a fair amount of debt, and a lot of people are driven into the other fields, so that they have a better chance of paying back the debt quicker. So why would you encourage your pre-med students to go into family practice or internal medicine or pediatrics?
Well, I think it really sort of depends on your makeup as a person. There's a lot of people who will make excellent physicians who would not do well doing what I do. You have to be willing to say, there's a lot of things I don't know, but I need to know what I really know, but more importantly, I need to know what I don't know. And that's difficult for a lot of students to be comfortable with. You have to be comfortable with a broad variety of people, a broad variety of illnesses. You have to be willing to...
Which, by the way, is the most interesting thing. I mean, you don't know what's behind that next door. I mean, it's just the interesting life that we have because it's so varied. Go ahead, I'm sorry, and you were going...
And the other part of it is, like what I've learned and experienced in my career, is I get a chance to follow people for a long, long time. There are a lot of people in Pierre, South Dakota that I met first as their physician when I first started that I'm still taking care of.
30 years,
and after 35 years, there's a lot about them that you know that when they do come to the office, it's not going to take long to figure out what you have to do.
Yeah.
You find out a lot about people how interesting they are, and a lot about them that's other than being a patient.
Right.
And those sorts of things, to me, are extremely appealing.
Very, very rewarding in the end. Our show discussion is driven by you. Call in your questions about anything related to the flu or anything at all. Dr. Huber is an expert in, as you say, the broad piece of medicine. We'll take any question about anything. Call in at 1-888-376-6225 or send us an email. So in this last 2 weeks, what interesting diagnoses have come your way?
Well, there's a couple that come to mind right away. One was a rare tumor that an older gentleman had in his abdomen called a leiomyosarcoma. And unfortunately, it led to his demise, but it was a recurrence of a problem that we attacked first about 20 years ago. And then it came back here at the end. You don't see those every day.
No, a leiomyosarcoma.
Now, it's hard enough to say and spell, let alone figure out what's wrong and what to do about it.
But it's back now.
And he did not survive. But he was also one of those guys I took care of for 35 years. And
breaks your heart.
It does. And so
you went to his funeral.
So he just passed this morning, and so his funeral, which may be in Gettysburg next week, we'll have to see. But it brought up a couple things. One, I've known him for a long time, took care of him for a long time, knew a lot about him, followed him, tried to keep him at home, which we did, even though he lived alone and was blind. He had family who kept track of him, and the place that he needed to be was in his home. And that's part of what you see on a regular basis, what we do. You want to keep people in the best place you can keep them, and you want to try to keep them as well as you can. And it worked for this man. The fact that this developed late, he lived to be elderly. He was able to live in his own home. He called his own shots. And that's what life is about. And those sorts of things, despite the fact that we had a problem with a name this long, it's all part of life, and that's what it's about.
And he didn't have to go through all sorts of stuff that was futile.
No, and if you took the time to listen, he told you what he wanted you to do. And all we did was
Yes,
Do what he
sir.
asked. Yes.
You're the man. You're the guy. We have a question. A 67-year-old woman from Watertown says that her doctor often won't treat her sinus infection like another doctor used to. She's had a stuffy nose and a headache for almost a week. That's the biggest question that we have for flu and influenza and the common cold is people want an antibiotic. Let's talk about that. That's a difficult issue. How would you guide us on that question?
Well, and it's a long story because when antibiotics first came out, they were miracle drugs. We were able to use them for people who had severe illnesses, and it saved their life. And we became an antibiotic-focused group of people in the United States. So we've grown up with the fact that we have these magical medicines that we were led to believe could fix a lot of things. And they can fix a lot of things. But the kind of illness that this viewer mentions, and influenza and the common cold, they are caused by germs that antibiotics will not treat. They don't help the problem at all. They're costly. You can have side effects. And the vast majority of people who have these sorts of illnesses will get better with other kinds of treatments, and they don't need antibiotics. And the way we as physicians have worked in the past when we didn't understand all this is we'd give people antibiotics and they got better. And we said, aha, the antibiotics did it.
Yeah.
And
the answer is?
They didn't get better because of the antibiotics. They just got better. And they would have got better no matter what. And because we study things, because medicine is a science and we reevaluate, we were able to look back and actually gather data that said, hey, listen, you don't need antibiotics. In fact, they might make it worse. So find other things to do for the patient that don't involve antibiotics, and we have. And those are the recommendations we make.
What's your typical spiel for somebody who's got sore throat, ache all over, hacky cough, feels miserable?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff you can do at home that's free. Go get in your hot shower. Turn it on. If you get dizzy in the hot shower, sit on your shower seat. Stick your head up in the shower, let that hot water hit you in the face, and snort it up your nose. Get it up in there and irrigate your sinuses. When you're done with that and you get all toweled off, you go get a big jug of water and drink that. If you're having a hacky cough, make yourself a cup of hot tea, put enough honey in there so it's thick, sip on that. That's a great remedy for a cough. Stay well hydrated, get your rest. And like I said earlier when the show first started, an old remedy for coughing and congestion is you take Vicks Vapor Rub, you put it on a big old hanky and put it around your neck, put it on your feet. Put your socks on. Grandma told you how to do that, and it works.
I think lemonade and honey is good. I think Hall's Mentholiptus sugar-free or a generic version. Drop it in a mug of hot tap water and sip on that. Smell the menthol. You know, the antibiotics don't make you better, and the overgrowth and resistant problems, they say it takes 6 months to get back your normal flora after a round of antibiotics. You want to use it very carefully.
There is also happening more often because of using antibiotics inappropriately at times. People have gotten very, very sick from that. And the kind of illness that you can get that's really, really difficult is when those antibiotics get into your colon and your bowel and they kill all the good germs that are supposed to be there, and all that's left is the bad ones. And then people get pain and diarrhea and they get complications from that. And that's a specific kind of an illness. And that can be quite severe. And that comes about when antibiotics are used for either inappropriately or for a real long period of time. Sometimes they have to be. So antibiotics, for all the good that they do, they have to be used properly so that they don't do bad things.
And so that they'll work when we need them.
Absolutely. We don't want to get germs that are resistant to these antibiotics. So we have to be careful. We have to use them judiciously. We have to be what physicians now say, good stewards of the antibiotic usage.
Good stewards. Influenza is a very serious disease, and it can take hold of all of us, even those of us working in the medical field.
I'd been on call one night or one Friday afternoon, and I think the next day I started feeling sick. And initially I think I had two different bugs. First I had a virus that caused diarrhea, and I got very down and dehydrated. And about 2 days later I was getting better and feeling like everything was back to normal. And then on the third day after I'd been on call, I started feeling really sick. I started running a very high temperature, started having a headache, really bad aches and pains, and I could tell something was wrong and I was getting worse. The worst symptoms were a bad headache, and I've never had headaches before, but probably muscle aching was very bad, and this overwhelming sense of fatigue. I've never been that fatigued or tired in my life, and it was pretty obvious that I was pretty ill from this viral illness. Well, my wife, who was a nurse, was convinced that I had something and I needed to be checked out, and she wanted to check my temperature, but she always wants to check my temperature, and I refused to let her do that. But finally, a couple days later, I was just super sick. I decided it was time to go into the clinic and be evaluated, and they checked my temperature, and it was 104.7. And I was confident at that point in time I had influenza. I was confident I had it before I went, just because I had all the right symptoms. So they did a nasal swab to confirm the diagnosis of influenza. I've had a flu shot every year since 1986 when I was a third-year medical student, and I would strongly recommend everyone get it every year. I had the flu shot that year, but very similar to last year, 2014-15 flu season, the virus mutated or changed a bit the year I had it, which was probably now 7 or 8 years ago. And every 5 years or so that happens, where the virus vaccine is created, and then the virus mutates or changes, and the vaccine isn't as effective as it normally is. And that happened the year I had it. But absolutely, you should get the flu shot every year, because it definitely has been proven to be beneficial. And influenza in South Dakota kills anywhere from maybe a dozen people up to 50 or 60 people every year. It varies by season.
I mean, it's an amazing thing, the influenza vaccine, because it does provide a herd immunity. Some say that it's the kids that you vaccinate that protects the elderly more than anything. But it'd be great to get as many people as you can vaccinate, because it covers the herd. Vaccinations are, what do you think about vaccinations? There's a lot said about vaccinations.
Before I get directly to that question, I just want to make sure that the audience truly understands what it is that we're talking about.
Okay, what is it we're talking about?
Okay, because when you talk about flu, you can be talking about this, and this is a verb, and it oftentimes applies to birds, but it is not what we're talking about tonight. You might be talking about chimneys, and that flu is part of a chimney. We're not talking about that tonight. We're talking about influenza, better known as the flu. So we just threw a bunch of F-bombs at you, and they're all good ones, and we're going to talk about the flu, and we're going to talk about immunizing you against the flu. But before we get to the immunizations, you do need to know that the flu bug is around here, and it's pretty common to get another 4-letter word out of that flu bug, and it's called snot. Now, when doctors talk about that stuff, they talk about what comes out of your nose. If it's clear, it's called rhinorrhea. You don't need to know that. You need to know that it's snot, and you know what to do about it. And if you're coughing, most of the time you don't cough up anything. But if you do cough up something and it's colored, that's another F-sounding word. It's called phlegm.
Phlegm.
With PH. So with that, we need to talk about things that we know can keep you from getting the flu.
Well, it's an amazing thing. The essay tonight is about the first vaccination for smallpox. And it's just the issue about how vaccinations have made such a difference. I don't know if you were in that first group that got the polio vaccination, but I had the shot the first time, and then the sugar cube came the next year. And my mother wept as I received that, because her brother had been so affected and paralyzed and disformed because of the polio that we had no protection for.
I was in the group that went to the old high school in Riggs, and stood in line and got the sugar cube when I was a little kid. Not long after one of my cousins in North Dakota died from polio and respiratory arrest.
Wow.
So I had a cousin who actually died from polio the same year I got the vaccine.
That's a heck of a story.
Yeah.
And now we don't have polio.
Nope.
I mean, it's just not around here anyway.
No.
Because of the vaccination.
The vaccinations have done marvelous things for large numbers of people. And because it's been so successful, our vaccination programs, because things don't occur as much as they used to, people start thinking, well, maybe we don't need to do them, and maybe there's things wrong with them. And that's unfortunate. That's a misinterpretation of the data.
So, I mean, there was an article in the Lancet that said, oh, there's a chance that the influenza vaccine or any vaccine or the kids' vaccines with mercury in it has brought on complications or problems. What's your take on that?
Well, that has been debunked several times. The person who wrote those articles said that the science was fabricated, that the results were false. But once that got into the media and once it got out into the public, some people just would not give it up. They would rather say that immunizations are bad for you than look at what the science says and what the data says. And the science and the data say they're safe. They also say that the conclusions that were reached by those people regarding mercury and autism and that stuff, that's blatantly false. It's wrong.
It's a lie.
It's a lie. And the sooner people can come to grips with that and forget it and get out of it, the better off we'll be.
So we used to have meningitis. We'd see meningitis in little kids. We'd see pneumococcal meningitis. We would see H-flu and meningitis in particular. I mean, it was disabling. It was killing. That's gone away.
I saw those cases. The last time I saw those cases was when I was in training here in Sioux Falls many, many years ago. Those immunizations have made that disease disappear. Those children now are growing up without the fear of getting that. The families don't have to worry about that. We don't have the complications and the chronically ill children that develop from that. So those immunizations, life-saving.
Life-saving. Man, from Scotland in 1977, my wife and I got the flu shot and were sick for 2 weeks. What may have caused this? Since then, we've never received another flu shot, but also never got the flu. What's your take on that?
Well, I'm glad you never got the flu. And the fact that you survived whatever illness you had in 1977 to the point where you can send us an email today is a testament to your good health. The conclusion that the flu made you sick, I think, is erroneous. I don't think there's any proof to that at all. I think you're lucky that you haven't gotten sick in all those years, so you must live a healthy lifestyle. And I would encourage you to get your flu shot every year, irregardless of that story.
You know, the reason that you should get the flu shot really is almost more for the people who have chemotherapy, the people who are immunocompromised, the people who have bad asthma, the people who, you're taking the flu shot almost more for other people than for yourself.
Yes, and that's called herd, H-E-R-D, like a whole bunch of cows, herd immunity. We want to get a large number of the population to have immunity to the virus, and it's good for everybody when that happens.
Right. They say that the Prevnar vaccine that all these little kids have gotten for years, there was a New England Journal of Medicine article that said that 500,000 lives, or some number like that, of the elderly did not die from pneumonia because of the Prevnar that was given to those little kids.
Yes, and what we're talking about is a special kind of pneumonia called pneumococcal pneumonia. Immunize little kids to pneumococcal pnumonia. Old people don't get pneumococcal pneumonia, and as you remember hearing many times, pneumonia is the old man's friend. So let's get rid of that one. Let somebody else be your new friend.
Yeah. We
don't need to have pneumococcal pneumonia be your old friend.
Although right now what they're doing is they're recommending that you get the 23-valent pneumovax, and a year later, after 65, you get the Prevnar.
Right.
And the government's in support of that.
Right. Or if for some reason what you got the first time was 13, then you get 23 later. There's two different strains, two different mixtures of that vaccine, and you're better off, especially in the over 65 crowd, which I'm not there yet, but somebody in the room is, then they should get two of them, 6 to 12 months apart.
We have a question about hyperparathyroidism. Could you explain what that is very quickly?
Hyperparathyroidism is a disease complex that comes about from the parathyroid glands, 4 little bitty glands that sit inside your thyroid gland, which sits right here in front of your neck.
Right. The thyroid gland is a butterfly, and it's 4 spots on the butterfly wing.
And it can cause a constellation of symptoms that sometimes are very hard to diagnose, Sometimes laboratory tests can tell us what might be wrong. Sometimes other special kind of tests can tell us what could be wrong. And then there are specific ways to treat that if indeed we find out that it's from a small benign tumor in those glands that then causes something to be produced that's not necessarily good for you. Very uncommon problem, but it can cause a constellation of symptoms that can be hard to diagnose.
And it runs with, not always, but it can run with other endocrine neoplasias.
Yes.
You know, so you need to see a good doctor, a good primary care doctor, and then maybe an endocrinologist or something.
Yes.
Woman from Pierre, how do they treat flatulence? Is there any way for me to treat this at home? Flatulence is a great question. I love that question.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Well, for the audience that doesn't know what flatulence is, it's farting. And what that means is you got a whole bunch of gas that goes through your intestinal tract, and it's got to go somewhere. And when it gets down that far, it only goes one way.
I was kind of expecting a four-letter F word sign that you would have, but you didn't bring that one.
I used them all up.
Okay.
And the gas that's produced either comes from the top down, from swallowing it, or it gets produced by the digestive processes that it gets rid of your food. And some foodstuffs in certain people make more gas than others. So people who chew gum, who are nervous, who drink a lot of carbonated beverages, get a lot of air in from the top, and that air is either going to go out the top, you're going to burp it out, or it's going to go out the bottom, and you get flatulence.
You know, I've heard that that's from, let's see, people who drink milk can get it, particularly if they don't have milk tolerance. People who drink or who eat root vegetables can get it. People who eat fruit a lot, and then of course fiber will bring it on. Gee, it's all those
healthy things.
Those good things.
Yeah.
So if you've got flatulence, I generally think of that as a sign that you're eating correctly.
Well, yes, it is, and they say that in dinosaur times, that it must have stunk horribly around the world because of so much flatulence from all those animals. But to get to the point, what can you do if you have it? Well, we talked about things that you eat or drink that may aggravate it and habits that may aggravate it. The one thing that I found, if you add it to your diet, it's called Beano. And
You want to say it again?
Beano, B-E-A-N-O. You can pick it up without a prescription. It's supposed to break down gas bubbles. But you know, flatulence is more of a social issue than a medical one.
Right.
So don't get too hung up about it.
Go to the other room.
Yeah, just don't get caught in the elevator.
I was amazed. I read one story. The elevator, of course, is a big problem. I read one particular article that did a study where they took plastic bags and they taped them to the bottoms of all these people. And they came to the conclusion, are you ready? That girls pass as much gas as guys do. I know that that's hard for you out there to realize that that could be the truth.
And I'm not going to go there at all. There's no win in that conversation.
There's no win in that conversation. Man from Sioux Falls, what's the difference between the tetravalent vaccine and the trivalent vaccine? There's 4 and 3 influenza vaccines. Do you know anything?
Well, right now, what we're given is the 4. Everybody in my office that comes in for the flu vaccine is getting the 4. And so 4 is better than 3, so it must be the way to go. We don't have any 3s, we got 4s. It's got to be a better vaccine.
All right, caller, I've had a terrible sore throat for almost 8 weeks. I had a bout of sinusitis, cough, cold, all that went away, but the sore throat persists. What should I do? Dr. Bean, looking at this point, I do not have strep. So persistent sore throat.
It may not be an infection. It may be something else going on. I think you're going to better go back to your physician, your family physician, or your primary care physician and say, hey, let's make sure I don't have something else going on.
Right. I would have my ears, nose, and throat doctor down the hall, Dr. Reitz, take a scope and look at those vocal cords and make sure that there's something not growing on them.
Yep.
So get in to be seen. Female from Herod, H1N1 and other strains made big headlines in the past, but are there any new strains we should be worried about currently?
A couple answers to that. If you're going to worry about it, what's that going to accomplish? So don't worry about something that you can't do anything about. Rely on the fact that the scientists in this country work hard at trying to anticipate which viruses are going to be causing the most illness, and then try to develop the vaccinations to that, so that when the time comes, we can get the appropriate vaccinations for the appropriate germs.
I can tell you that some people are critical of vaccination companies. I am enthusiastically supportive of them because there's going to be an epidemic. It's not going to be if there's going to be an epidemic that's going to be dangerous to us. It's when. And our defense is going to be how fast we can get a vaccination for whatever it might be that's going to be coming. Any comment on that?
Well, my own personal experience was right after 9/11. As a member of the medical staff in Pierre, when we weren't sure what was going to come next, were we going to be invaded? Was there going to be some kind of a biological warfare thing? They offered to the medical staff the ability to get vaccinated again to smallpox. And so I did.
Did you?
I went ahead and got vaccinated one more time. And the thing is it took, and my scab was off in about 48 hours. So my immunity was just super good. What about the potential danger for that? In my opinion, it was well worth getting it done. Unfortunately, we did not have 100% participation from our doctor staff to do that. So there was concerns on the part of intelligent physicians not to, and a little bit of fear. But I'm a firm believer in prevention. I'm a firm believer that immunizations do what they're supposed to do. So if I'm going to preach it, then I better do it when it's offered to me, and I did.
Yeah. I didn't get offered another vaccine. 70-year-old caller, do medications such as statin for cholesterol cause the flu vaccine to be less effective? I've had my flu shot and recently read an article that this might be possible. I have not heard that.
I have not heard that either. Not to worry. You're okay.
61-year-old man from White River, I haven't had a flu shot in a few years because the last few times I got a deep itch at the injection site. Are there any other ways for me to get immunized?
None that are as good as the flu shot.
61.
So
I take the itch as a positive sign.
Go get the flu shot. The itch is a minor issue.
It tells you that your immune system is kicking in.
It's going to be more dangerous for you to drive from White River to Pierre at night on a 2-lane highway because 1 in 4 drivers coming at you is drunk than it is to put up with the itch from your flu shot. Get your flu shot, forget about the itch.
Forget about the itch. Rub a little hydrocortisone cream on it. We have a 68-year-old male from Vermilion. How important is raw local honey for the treatment of mild to moderate allergies? What do you think of raw honey?
My understanding is raw honey could be potentially dangerous as well. So I think you need to be very, very careful with that.
Botulism.
And if you get botulism, then the other issues are pretty minor. So in terms of, is it the best thing to do for that? My answer is no.
85-year-old woman, please discuss trigeminal neuralgia.
Trigeminal neuralgia is a painful problem that comes from a nerve that comes out of the side of your head here and that divides into 3 branches. That's why it's called trigeminal, tri for 3. And what happens is you get a malfunction of that nerve and you get a lightning strike along the path of that nerve, whichever of the branches that it chooses to go. And when people get it, they twitch and it hurts and it's sharp and it's very, very uncomfortable. We don't know exactly why people get it, but it can be associated with some other illnesses, and your physician probably has some things that he might want to do in terms of testing and treatment to help you if you get those symptoms.
And I think that a little round of acyclovir wouldn't hurt, and a steroid burst wouldn't hurt. And then, but if you talk to the experts, they may not say that. There are meds that we can use, but it's not always the most effective. And unfortunately, it's about the worst pain. I mean, people have committed suicide because of trigeminal.
I've seen some cases like that where it was very, very debilitating until it backed off on its own.
Sometimes it's these shooting types of pains, and sometimes it can be a constant pain. It comes on a temporal basis. I tell you what I do with those when I've tried my first round or two, I get them to Carol Miles in Sioux Falls, the headache expert, and let her give it a try at it.
Yeah.
It'd be great. 60-year-old man from Plankington. The doctor ordered an ultrasound on my liver, and now they want to do additional blood work. What exactly is a fatty liver? Should it be a concern for a 60-year-old man with no symptoms?
Well, sometimes a fatty liver can be indicative of some other medical problems, and the fact that you had an ultrasound in your liver in the first place means the doctor was thinking of something. And now that he has that finding, that should be pursued to get a more precise reason for why that's there. Is it from something else? Is it serious? Does it need to be treated, or can it be watched? That's why he's pursuing that.
And the problem is a lot of this fatty liver is related to being obese.
Yes, because you're fat someplace else. Why not be fat in your liver?
Yeah, and then the other side of it is that, like hepatitis C, fatty liver from obesity can bring on cirrhosis. And if you've got cirrhosis, there's a secondary risk of cancer of the liver. So certainly worth following up on.
Yes, absolutely.
75-year-old man, I haven't had the flu shot in 20 years. Do they give the flu shot to residents in the nursing home, especially residents that are weak?
Yes.
Great answer. The answer is yes, they do. Should they? Yes, they should. Haven't had it in 20 years?
Get one. Break the cycle.
Break the cycle. 52-year-old man from Yankton has trouble with staying warm, and doctors said his thyroid looks good, blood work is normal. What could be a possible reason as to why he can't seem to stay warm?
If you're a smoker or were a smoker for a long time and your blood vessels are all crudted up and they don't get good blood flow to parts of your body, that'd make you cold. Maybe your thermostat's as old as you are and it doesn't work as good as it used to. So put on the warm clothes and the blanket. If there's nothing seriously wrong, you can get warm any which way you want.
And you know, there's these neuropathies, so make sure your B12 is normal as well as your thyroid. But you know, I think you're exactly right. These people, some older people,
They're cold.
they're just cold. Just stay warm. Wear woolly socks, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea not to stay cold.
Yeah. You know, I don't think it's a sign of danger. It's so take care of it and not worry.
Make sure your B12 is normal. 72-year-old woman from Sioux Falls, my friend's husband is 78 years old and presenting with symptoms of Alzheimer's, but the doctor says he has vascular problems. What's the difference between a vascular dementia and Alzheimer's dementia, Tom?
Alzheimer's dementia is a specific diagnosis that meets specific criteria when you do tests on people. And vascular dementia means that we know exactly why you have it. It's from a blood vessel problem going to parts of your brain that the blood flow isn't as good as it used to be. Again, corrosion from blood vessels, they don't work as good. Sometimes the symptoms and the signs are very hard to differentiate, but the treatment for a vascular dementia is going to be different than the treatment for an Alzheimer's dementia. And unfortunately, some people have elements of both. And so a good diagnostic physician maybe can help make the difference between the two, or establishing the fact that you have one or the other or both, and recommend the proper treatments for each one to see if indeed they will help.
And really, early vascular disease, I mean, of course, vascular disease will come if you get old enough. Early vascular disease can be prevented by lifestyle things.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that.
We know that if there are certain things you do and certain things you don't do from a relatively early age on, can certainly lessen the likelihood of developing vascular problems anywhere, and developing things such as Alzheimer's. And these things are simple, they're easy, and by and large, they're free. Get good regular exercise, go for a walk. I don't care how old you are, start today. Work your way up to 30 to 45 minutes a day. What happens if it's snowing? Go to the building where you can walk inside. Now in Pierre, we have a new Menards. You can walk in there for 4 days and never see the same thing. If you're smoking, quit. Quit right now. Long-term smoking messes up your blood vessels, and that'll cause things to age quicker everywhere, brain and other parts of your body. If you're drinking booze, alcohol, make sure you limit your intake. Moderation, 1 to 2 drinks at most. And understand that long-term use of alcohol is going to make you not well. Get off your butt. Don't sit there all the time. Sitting around all the time makes you fat, makes you lazy, turns your muscles to mush. You don't feel good. And stress, if you're worrying all the time about stuff, that'll make you get sicker faster. Takes longer to get well. It'll age you quicker as well too. Find something fun to do. Do things that exercise your brain. Read, music, puzzles, volunteer. Don't just sit around and watch TV and turn to mush again. How much of those things cost money? Not a single one. Do they work? Yep, you'll be healthier for doing those things.
Yes, you are. Thank you for that beautiful montage, because I've said it too many things, and it was beautifully done. I love that. And the point is, and I would say, of all those that you mentioned, everybody's different. So it's an individual thing. I can't express the value, though, of a walk every single day. How wonderful can that help? It makes you feel better.
And you can accomplish a lot of stuff on your walk. You can have those conversations with yourself about the things. You can cuss the government. You can come up with ideas for things. Or you can just enjoy, like I do in the morning when I go for a walk.
We can always cuss the government.
Yeah, I love looking at the stars in the morning and how different they are. And you just let loose, and it gets the day started very well.
We have a male calling in. Is it possible to get the flu from the nasal version because it is because it's live attenuated? So I mean the nasal spray.
Yeah, flu mist.
Flu mist. Yeah. What do you think of the flu mist?
Oh, well, it's a lot more expensive, and you have some side effects of irritation in the nose. And why don't you want to get the flu shot? Get that.
It's cheaper.
Yes.
And so, but you have to be under a certain age too for the flu mist.
It's a kid thing, unless you're so young at heart you qualify.
All right. Yeah. 68-year-old man from Sioux Falls. Avian flu recently killed a lot of birds around the Midwest. Can this infect humans, and how severe is the infection? If it cannot infect humans, is there a chance it will mutate and be able to infect humans?
Well, the last question is pretty easy. Anything can mutate, and so maybe it can, maybe it can't. Don't know. How did it get here in the first place? Was it the migratory birds flying around and letting stuff drop? And how many human beings died with the avian flu during that epidemic? And I don't remember, we went into those confinement areas and we killed all those birds, but we didn't go into nursing homes and kill all the people. So the avian flu wasn't as bad for people as it was for birds.
Yep, there you go.
So my advice on that one is I don't think we have to worry too much yet, but we have to rely on our scientific people and our researchers to make sure that if something like that does develop, we get ahead of it.
Shingles vaccine is wondering if she needs to get the shingles vaccine 82 years of age.
I would get it if I were you, because you don't want to get shingles. Just listen to that Terry Bradshaw commercial. Nobody sells that vaccine better than he does, and he's right. When he talks about it, listen to what he says. I'm not a big fan of advertising, except that's the best one I've ever seen. Get the vaccine.
Yeah, I've had mine. We've got time to move to this. Well, no conversation about influenza would be complete without our next guest. You've no doubt seen him because, unfortunately, he almost had celebrity status here in South Dakota despite being someone no one wants to be around. I'm talking about the not-so-lovable flu bug.
Hi.
In keeping with presidential debate season, for the remainder of our show, we're going to approach our discussion about the influenza vaccine in a debate format. I will ask the questions. You don't want that. And where appropriate, you'll both have the chance to respond. Let's start with the basics. What is influenza, Dr. Huber?
Influenza is a contagious respiratory illness caused by the influenza virus. It can cause mild to severe illness. Older adults and children, along with people with other health complications and conditions, are at high risk for the complications of influenza.
You're looking at him. Hi.
What are the symptoms of influenza, Dr. Huber?
Usually it's a sudden onset of a fever and a cough and a sore throat and a runny or stuffy nose, remember those F words, and muscle or body aches and headaches and fatigue. It can spread up to 1 day before the symptoms and develop 5 to 7 days after becoming sick.
Yeah, what you said.
Yeah. Flu bug, this question is for you. How does influenza spread?
Oh, well, I enjoy, spreading my sickness by coughing on a lot of people or, talking to people who aren't infected yet, licking staplers, things like that. Infecting doorknobs and railings, whatever I can.
And what are the symptoms?
Well, let's see. I really enjoy fever and cough and, let's see, sore throat, aches, headache, fatigue, the stuff that makes me happy. And I like to share.
Share your misery,
I do.
Son of a gun.
Misery loves company.
Dr. Huber, can influenza kill somebody?
It sure can. Most of those deaths from influenza will occur in older adults, particularly those over the age of 65.
Oh. And so what, Tom, is considered the peak flu season?
Mainly October through March. We're in it.
We're right in the smack dab. So flu bug.
Yeah.
Do you think is that the case?
Oh, I suppose that's about right. But
yeah.
I'm not picky, you know. I'll come around whenever.
And what's the best way to prevent influenza?
Well, no doubt the best thing to do is to get a vaccination. Get immunized. Get your flu shot. Everybody 6 months and older should receive an annual flu shot. And here's the data to do that. And get the app on your iPhone so you can figure out what the schedule is. Get it about 2 weeks ahead of time so that you're protected with the vaccine.
Really? You had to go there.
Yes, I did.
I disagree completely. I mean, you know, getting vaccinated is like slamming the door in my face. And who'd want to do that?
What should a person do if they develop flu-like symptoms, Dr. Huber?
Well, stay home and quit getting other people sick. Wash your hands a lot. Cover your coughs and sneeze into your elbow like that. Drink a lot of fluids. Take it easy. If you're sick, stay home. Don't go to school. Don't be wiping your hands on me. Stay there until your fever's been gone for at least 24 hours without taking anything like Tylenol or ibuprofen to reduce the fever.
I disagree completely. You know, again, you know, if you've got me, share, you know, don't be selfish. Spread me around and, you know, maybe borrow people's phones, make sure you go to work and go to school, things like that. You know, spread me around, spread the joy.
Last question. When should someone with influenza seek emergency care, Dr. Huber?
Well, with little kids, you want to go if they're having difficulty breathing, if they're having trouble staying awake, if they're not drinking very much fluids, so that they're not peeing very much or making tears when they cry. For adults, somewhat similar symptoms. Difficulty breathing, pain or pressure in the chest, dizziness, confusion, vomiting, or the fever comes back. Those can all be signs that something's getting haywire here. Better get checked.
Well, and you know that people who have influenza, we know that we can't treat it, but about a week later they start coming down with fever a second time. Does that say we're into trouble and maybe there could be pneumonia?
Yes, and I would get that rechecked, make sure things are going to be okay.
I think that secondary couple, 3, 4, 5 days, the cough comes back and there's a fever again. We need to get in and be seen. Well, that's all the time we have today. Dr. Huber, flu bug, thank you for being my guest today. Any parting advice for our viewers?
Well, as for me, I'm looking forward to a very productive flu season and, you know, go out there, share me around, make sure the best part of me is out there everywhere. The grocery store, work, you know, and I get around. You know, just like I'm sitting right here in the studio with you guys.
The time is up, flu bug. Dr. Huber, anything you'd like to add?
Get vaccinated. Keep this guy away from you.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you both for being on our show today.
My pleasure.
And now for the winner of tonight's Prairie Doc quiz question, true or false? After they were vaccinated, some people developed the flu because of vaccination. True or false? The answer is false. Vaccination and the vaccine does not contain any complete live flu virus. You will not get the flu from vaccination. It was Ruth Hartley who correctly answered our question. Thank you, Ruth, for your answer. The book will be in the mail to you soon. We'll be right back after this.
You still feeling lousy, sweetheart?
Terrible. Day 4 of aches, chills, sweats.
Oh, poor thing. You're just not you when you have the flu.
I don't feel like me at all. Do I look sick?
You look different.
Oh, you're so sweet.
That's not your pretty face.
Feel like yourself. Get vaccinated because stopping the flu starts with you.
Miracles still happen. Some think that the scourge of smallpox was present around 12,000 years ago. And we have proof that it was here 3,000 years ago as it was found on the face of an Egyptian pharaoh mummy. We know that it caused many large and devastating epidemics, killing about 35% of infected adults and 80% of infected children. Even during the 20th century, smallpox still resulted in 300 to 500 million deaths worldwide. Smallpox describes a miserable viral illness given the medical term variola, from Latin for spotted pimple. It was commonly known as the Red Plague. until in Britain during the 1600s it became smallpox to distinguish it from great pox or syphilis. Pictures of people suffering from this illness show skin of face and body breaking out with dime-sized, firm white or red blisters. People also commonly developed fevers and vomiting, spread of blisters into the mouth and eyes, and too often came to a wretched and miserable death. If one survived, the common facial pox scars were extremely disfiguring and even affected the cornea of the eyes, causing blindness commonly. During the 10th century in China, somebody began inoculating the fluid from a smallpox blister onto the abraded skin of a healthy individual, allowing for a single pox to get started in a controlled way on an arm or leg. This worked pretty well, except that the procedure made them infectious to others for a while and resulted in deaths to the recipient 1% of the time. Contracting usual smallpox killed about 35% of adults, and so 1% was better. So it was that this rather dangerous process of inoculating live smallpox became fairly popular in England during the 1600s and 1700s. Noting that milkmaids rarely got smallpox, in 1796, British rural physician Edward Jenner found that inoculating the fluid of the milder diseased cowpox provided for substantial immunity from smallpox without significantly giving risk to the recipient and without the danger of spreading smallpox. Jenner called the cowpox inoculant vaccine after vacca, the Latin word for cow. With the vaccination campaign led by the World Health Organization, worldwide deaths reduced from 2 million per year in 1967 to none in 1977. I find it nothing short of a miracle that in those 10 years, human smallpox infections were virtually eliminated from this world. It was a miracle wrought by human intelligence and the ingenuity of creative and resourceful minds. It was the miracle of vaccination. A heartfelt thank you to our guests, Tom Huber of Sanford Health Clinic, Pier, and well, I guess thank you, Flubug. I just hope we've seen the last of him around the studio for a while. And thank you at home as well. We generally appreciate your participation in our discussion. And we've have confirmed cases of the flu reported in South Dakota. Last flu season, 63 people in South Dakota died of flu-related causes, you son of a gun. Do not delay. Get your flu vaccine now to reduce your chances of having to spend time with the flu bug. Our staff has gotten the flu shot, and you should too. Well, from all of us here at On Call with the Prairie Doc, until next time, stay healthy out there, people.
We seldom think about respiration. It is as natural as, well, breathing. But when something interferes with that process, we notice it. Every breath you take. Next time, On Call with the Prairie Doc.
Funding for On Call with the Prairie Doc is provided in part by
Avera is a proud sponsor of On Call on South Dakota Public Broadcasting.
Larson Manufacturing is proud to support On Call Television as it continues to open doors for important medical information.
and by the South Dakota Foundation for Medical Care, the Medicare Quality Improvement Organization for South Dakota. Additional funding is provided by Aberdeen Asthma and Allergy, Brookings Health System, Dakota Allergy and Asthma, Dakota Care, Orthopedic Institute, Physicians Care Sanford Clinic Community Service Committee, Swiftel Communications, and Vance Thompson Vision. Closed captioning for On Call with the Prairie Doc is provided by Avera, Brookings Health System, and Fishback Financial Corporation.